The cry cut through the marble hallway like a crack in glass, small, trembling, and painfully out of place in a house built to silence every discomfort. Arav Mehta paused mid-step, one hand on his phone, the other adjusting the cuff of his tailored suit. He was late for a board call, late for a flight, late for everything that mattered in the world he ruled. Yet that sound, raw, unfiltered grief, stopped him cold. It wasn't the sound of an adult complaint or a staff issue. It was the sound of a child discovering, perhaps for the first time, that something precious could break and not be fixed. Arav followed the sound down a narrow corridor rarely used by guests, toward the servants' quarters. He hadn't walked this way in years. His mansion was designed with beautiful distances, wide spaces that separated him from the mess of ordinary life. As he neared the small room at the end of the hall, he heard a woman's soft, urgent whisper, trying to comfort someone she didn't quite know how to save. Inside, little Anaya sat cross-legged on the floor, clutching a plastic doll with one arm torn clean off. Her face was blotchy and red, tears dripping onto the faded rug. Beside her knelt her mother, Syra, the housemaid who had worked for the Mehta family for over a decade. She looked up sharply when she saw Arav standing there, her eyes widening in fear. "I'm so sorry, sir," Syra said quickly, pulling Anaya closer. She didn't mean to make noise. "I'll take her outside." Arav raised a hand without realizing it. "Wait," he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, uncertain, almost gentle. Anaya looked up at him, her lip trembling. "It broke," she whispered, holding up the doll as if it were a wounded friend. "Abba said it was special." The word struck Arav harder than any insult ever had. Abba said it was special. He remembered being a boy once, too, before the money, before the suits, before the walls he built around himself. He remembered how fragile happiness had been then. What happened to it? Arav asked, crouching down despite the crease forming in his trousers. "I dropped it," Anaya sobbed. "Mama said we can't buy another. It was my birthday gift." Syra lowered her eyes. "Sir, please forgive her. I'll handle this." Arav didn't respond right away. He stared at the broken doll, then at the child's shaking shoulders, then at Syra's hands, rough, tired, always working. Something uncomfortable stirred inside him. He'd signed contracts worth millions that morning without a second thought, yet here was a problem that money could solve instantly, and still felt heavier than all of them combined. "Give it to me," he said softly. Anaya hesitated, then handed him the doll with both hands, as if trusting him with something sacred. Arav stood, nodding once. "I'll be back." The household buzzed when word spread that the CEO had left in the middle of a meeting. Staff whispered behind closed doors. Some assumed there was a crisis at the company. Others guessed a powerful investor had called. No one imagined the truth, that Arav Mehta was driving himself to a small workshop across town, holding a broken toy in the passenger seat like a promise. The repairman was old, his hands steady in a way that only came from years of careful work. Arav waited, restless, checking his watch every few minutes, until finally the man smiled. "It won't be perfect," he said. "But it will hold." "That's fine," Arav replied. "Perfect isn't necessary." When he returned to the mansion, the atmosphere felt different to him, quieter, heavier. He walked straight back to the servants' quarters. Syra stood immediately, panic in her eyes. "I'm sorry, sir." Arav held out the doll. Its arm was reattached, a faint line visible where it had once broken. Anaya gasped, her tears instantly forgotten. She grabbed the doll and hugged it tightly, as if afraid it might vanish. "It's okay now," Arav said. "Some things break, but they can still be mended." Anaya smiled, a full, radiant smile that lit something inside him he didn't know was still alive. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and turned to leave, but something made him stop. He looked at Syra. How old is she? 6, sir. Does she go to school? Syra hesitated. Not yet. The fees, they're difficult. Arav felt a familiar tightening in his chest, the reflex to solve and move on. But this time, he stayed. She should, he said. I'll arrange it. Syra's eyes filled with tears. Sir, we don't ask for, I know, he interrupted gently. That's why I'm offering. Over the next weeks, the household watched in disbelief as small changes began to ripple outward. Anaya started school at one of the city's best institutions. Arav insisted on paying quietly, without announcements or credit. But it didn't stop there. He began asking questions about staff families, about their struggles, about things he had never allowed himself to notice. Not everyone approved. His mother confronted him one evening. You're blurring lines, she warned. People will take advantage. Or maybe, Arav replied, we've drawn lines where there shouldn't be any. At work, his board grew restless. They noticed his attention shifting, his priorities softening. Philanthropy is fine, one director said, but don't let emotions interfere with business. Arav listened, nodded, and then surprised them all by launching an internal fund for employee families, education grants, and healthcare support. Loyalty grows where dignity is respected, he told them. And dignity isn't charity. Challenges followed quickly. Costs rose. Critics questioned his leadership. A major investor threatened to pull out, calling the changes sentimental nonsense. For the first time in years, Arav doubted himself. Late at night, alone in his vast bedroom, he wondered if he was undoing everything he'd built. One evening, as he walked through the house, he heard laughter, bright, unrestrained. He followed the sound and found Anaya sitting at the dining table, doing homework, her doll propped beside her. She looked up and waved. Sir. I learned a new word today. Something settled inside him then. A quiet certainty. Months later, the investor left. The headlines were harsh. But something unexpected happened, others stepped in. Partners who shared his values. Employees who worked harder, prouder, because they felt seen. Productivity rose. So did trust. Years passed. Anaya grew, confident, curious, unafraid to speak. Syra walked taller. The household changed, not in luxury, but in warmth. Arav changed most of all. One evening, long after the broken toy had become a distant memory, Anaya stood on a small stage at her school, accepting an award. In her speech, she spoke about kindness, about second chances, about how one small act can change the shape of a life. Arav listened from the audience, his eyes wet, his hands folded tightly together. He finally understood what that cry in the hallway had been. It wasn't just a child mourning a toy. It was a reminder that wealth without compassion is empty, and power without humanity is fragile. Sometimes, the smallest broken things reveal the biggest truths, and the greatest impact doesn't come from grand gestures, but from choosing, in one quiet moment, to care.